Humans podcast. My name's Hallie Madeline, and each week we'll be interviewing inspiring humans from all over the world who are living examples of what happens when you pour energy into yourself so that you're better equipped to give energy to the world around you. It starts within, but it doesn't end within, because when we show up for ourselves, we show up for the world. Boom. Okay.
We're live.
Beautiful. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of the Happy Humans podcast. I am here today with my dear friend and amazing human being, Olivia Hartzler, and she is such a beautiful soul that we got divinely connected to each other in Moab and just has been such an amazing influence on my life. Ever since then, I will let her give herself a little bit more detailed of an intro, but welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know a detailed intro. It's just like so intimidating. Where do you even start? So many things to say.
What are you up to in life right now? What are you most passionate about? What is your purpose connected to?
The things I'm most passionate about, like it really just comes down to connection and helping people connect more deeply to themselves and to their experience, to every moment, like throughout the day, to each other, to things they love, to joy, to happiness, just that I feel like is something that I'm really starting to just now learn for myself. And the more I experience it, the more clear I am that it's something I'm meant to share with the world, to help people find. Because when you look around, we just see so much disconnection, so much worry, like anxiety, so much fear. I feel like so many people are just operating from this place of fear and obligation. And that just doesn't feel good. And it's not sustainable, and it's not what life can be. And so I just feel so connected to that mission of just like helping people connect back to their hearts. Because that's what I needed the most. Like that is the most defining shift in my life, has been when I've been able to just move out of this place of fear, out of obligation, of living my life according to other people's rules or expectations, and just like really like in the moment, just like resting and just like feeling that ease and that joy and that peace and connection just in the simplest things. And I feel like that's so lost in our society, and that really is like where my biggest passion, like deepest purpose all comes back to.
Well, you definitely embody that. So thank you for being you and for being authentic. And I guess with everything you're diving into now, what was kind of your path of, I love hearing about just where people have come from to where they are now, and like what along their journey has influenced and shaped just your current passions and purpose. And just feel like so much of our struggles are so tied to our purpose, and would love to hear more about, I guess, how you got to where you are now, and just tell us a little bit more about your healing journey and how that has evolved and what that has looked and felt like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much to say. But it's so true. I feel like our purpose is so tied to our own individual struggles and the things that we've had to work through. And for me, like when I speak about these things and say that so many people are experiencing disconnection, that's what I experienced for most of my life. It's been a really recent, in the last couple of years is when I really started to dive into this work and like really start to peel back the layers of everything that comes with being human. And so it's been a really long journey. I was not raised to be like connected to myself or my intuition or how I was feeling. It was never about like, how does this feel for you? It was always about, well, these are the rules and you just play by them. And so I was raised really religious with a lot of structure, a lot of like, do this, don't do that, like be like this, don't be like that. And in a lot of ways I was taught to judge people that were different than me. And it was all out of a place of fear of somebody else having a different experience, having a different perspective. And that was like such a threatening thing in the environment that I grew up in. And it was like, don't get tricked by this other way of living. Like, this is the only way. Especially within the confines just of religion. It was very much so like, don't even open your mind to those possibilities. Like, don't let Satan into your mind. I mean, like, really, that was like that fear of just not exploring anything outside of what was accepted. And so I had no idea whatsoever, like, who I was or what I wanted out of my life by the time I was like 18 and ready to move out and go to college. I had just played by the rules that had been passed down to me. But looking back now, I had always struggled. I'd always like felt so just uncomfortable in my life. Like, it never felt good. I never felt connected. I never really felt seen. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, the words that I have for it now, I didn't have that language to describe it at the time, because it was just, I mean, I never experienced anything other than that. So I didn't even like know to call it what it was.
I feel that.
And so it's been a slow journey, and there's been so many things, but really the biggest, most defining thing along it has just been the pain that I felt. Like, I experienced a lot of trauma when I was 18, which sent me to Colorado, which is how I ended up here. And at the time I was just running away from it, and I had no really reason to come to Colorado other than just I was trying to escape the life that I was currently living. But ultimately now I can look back and I can see like how guided that was, and how all of the things that I experienced leading up to that point like brought me here. And it's when I reconnected with nature, honestly, that is like been one of the biggest things in healing, is just spending time outside in the mountains and just exploring and feeling free in that way. And that was, for so many years, the only medicine that I knew how to give myself. It was the only tool I had to feel connected, to feel joyful, to feel light. And so I prioritized it above all else. Like, it literally became my whole life and my whole identity. And it was such a huge facilitator in bringing me to where I'm at now. But the way that I was engaging with it wasn't sustainable. And now I can look at nature and I can see the ways that it's healed me, but it's not coming from this place of wanting an escape. It's like being able to come to it with that presence of whatever it is that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was totally just like, this is the only place I feel like I can breathe. So I'm just going to be here as much as I can.
I feel like that's so common.
Yeah. And I really feel like it was just the unraveling of my like so tightly bound nervous system. And these just, I mean, I can just remember the way it used to feel to live in my body. Like, just like ease was not a word I understood. Like, it was just like I was always pushing towards what I think I wanted, or trying to like force things. And the way I worked out, it wasn't because I was like celebrating my body. It was like a punishment almost. Like, I have to like, push myself as hard as I can to prove that I'm worthy. Like, I feel like so much of my life was just proving that I was worthy. Because I didn't understand that idea of just innate worthiness and ease. And so nature was a huge part of healing for me. Body work was also a huge thing too. I actually I worked for a chiropractor around, I think it was like 5 years ago. And he did a type of chiropractic. It was an energetic work. It's called network spinal analysis. So it works with the tension in your nervous system, not just popping bones back into place, but like, why am I being pulled out of balance? What is the tension in my nervous system, and what is it doing then to my like physical body? And so it was really focused on relieving that tension. And that was the start of the true unraveling.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where like, it was all in my nervous system. I was so bound so tightly to all the things I experienced in my life leading up to that point. Like all of the heaviness, the confusion, the fear, the doubt, like it still lived in my body. I had never really like looked at it. I didn't have the space to look at it. And so having that support was really when my journey like started. I mean, obviously, actually, no, that's not true. My journey was happening the whole time. But that was when I first really was able to stop and breathe. That was it.
It's a huge catalyst.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then from that point, I feel like, I mean, the body and the mind and the soul, like everything is so connected. So the more space I created in my body, the gentler I was with my body, like the more I just started to unwind, the more I had the space to look at all of the emotional pain that I was like running from, all the things that I was running from, all the fears that I had, all the stories that I was telling myself that I was letting just play out in my life that were so destructive and just they weren't how I wanted to experience life anymore. And that was the first time that I was really able to see that, like, wow, okay, I've been living as a victim for so long, and I've just been letting these things like perpetuate, and these traumas and beliefs and like things that are mine to like carry, that I was the one who experienced. I was looking outside of myself for someone to fix them. And it was more that idea of I never should have experienced it, instead of feeling the agency to actually start to move through it and start to create a life that I wanted. Just like not despite these things, but just like not letting them drive every decision that I was making. And for so long, all my focus was, this shouldn't have happened, instead of being like, okay, this happened, and what can I do in this moment despite having this happened? Like, how can I then show up differently to change this story that I keep playing out of just complete self-destruction?
Yes. I feel like that's where it starts, like being able to, first of all, actually clear your system from those traumas allows you to then have the space to just observe the stories and rewrite them. And it's so crazy. Like the work's never done, as we know.
Never done.
It's crazy, like watching those play out and seeing how we get so attached to the stories that we're telling ourselves and want to. I just resonate so much with all of that, like the victim mindset and being like, well, this happened to me, and like not being willing to be like, yes, like it happened, but like we can't control any of that. So like, where are we going to go from here, and how are we going to use this? And I feel like that's where like power is created, and that, I mean, in the most loving sense, but just that's where your magic truly begins.
Right.
Is like in doing that work for yourself and allowing yourself to clear your channel to open your gifts to the world.
Yeah. Which
I'm so glad that you have done the work and the inner work to be able to get here and share your magic with all of us. And I just thank you for sharing your story. I love hearing just people's journeys of how they're getting here and each person's unique healing journey. So with having talked about the past, in the present, one of my favorite modalities of yours is your cacao ceremonies that you host. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the drink that we're drinking right now?
We're drinking cacao right now. Yeah, absolutely. Cacao is just such a beautiful and such a gentle medicine. And for people that aren't familiar with like cacao, yes, it really is just like drinking a cup of chocolate, ultimately. I mean, that is what cacao is. But it is so much more than that. And it really depends on the cacao that you get, and like if it is ceremonial grade. And so the cacao that I work with is from Guatemala. It's from the mountains of Guatemala, and it's been thousands of years that the people there have been harvesting and cultivating and growing and blessing this plant, and have allowed this plant to just transform them and to be like an ally for them through their life. And we say like everything is energy, right? Like every single thing has an energetic field to it, and plants vibrate at a certain energy, and they have an intelligence about them. They're alive. The same way we all have like this intelligence inside of us that allows our body to function, tells all of our systems what to do, like that life force. Plants have it, and we've evolved with them. They've been such an integral, obviously, part of survival. We wouldn't be here without them, and they provide so much for us. And so the vibration of cacao is just so healing. It's like a warm hug. And just drinking a cup and allowing yourself to feel like that vibration of what it feels like in your body, and just like allowing it to crack you open. It's a big heart opener, so it opens your heart, which so many of us are walking around with closed hearts because the world doesn't feel safe to really open up and live from your heart, or it hadn't for so long. And I think so many of us too, just generationally, if you look at the trauma that so many of the people that came before us have experienced, just like for so much of human history, it being so focused on survival, that there wasn't really the space to just connect to your heart and breathe and like, as cheesy as it sounds, like follow your heart and that like inner knowing and that intuition. And so cacao, this plant, is a beautiful way to help you. And it's a beautiful facilitator, and it's so powerful, but so is every human. So it's not like the cacao gives you some superpower, but it's just allowing that frequency to resonate like in your body and allowing it to do its work without having to use your mind. Like it's not something you logically think about. You're not sitting there being like, oh, how exactly, like what are the processes going on, or like how is this opening my heart? Like that doesn't matter. It's just about the feeling of it.
Yeah.
And so gathering women in circle and having this plant to help all of us like facilitate opening our hearts and just like embody that frequency, feel that frequency, have that frequency running through you. It just opens up to like such a deeper level of healing. And it's really just so profound.
For all the people out there who I used to be like, who were like, the heart is just a muscle or blood just pumps through it. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the heart is as from an energetic perspective and what opening the heart like actually means?
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. Like for so much of my life, this idea of intuition or just like inner knowing or following your heart, like it was just like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like what is that? And the idea of like feeling, for so long I was so disconnected from my emotions and my feeling because it just didn't feel safe to feel them. So my heart was so closed off. But when you close off your heart, you close off your joy. And so just like opening your heart, it looks different for everyone, and there's not like one specific way. And that's, I think, the thing with this kind of work is it's not just like, oh, this way worked for this person, so that's what I do. It's really just finding things that connect you back to that like deep like joy and gratitude for life. And you can open your heart in any way. It's really just like meditating on that space and like feeling it and allowing that feeling of like love. Like what does love feel like? What does unconditional acceptance and just like complete surrender, what does that feel like? Think of somebody that you love so, like if you're like, I don't know how to connect to these feelings within myself, then think of somebody or something or whatever it is that you love the most and just like sit there and bring that person like into your awareness and just like think about the things about them that you love, or if it's an activity or if it's a place or your pet, like whatever it is, like really just like feeling into what that makes you feel and how that feels in your body, and just like breathing into your space like of your heart. And then just like that, I mean, that's how you open your heart. It's connecting to what love is for you.
Because the heart is energy and like has energy flowing through it, in the sense that our bodies are made up of that. And so, I mean, it's not just like the muscle that pumps blood. It actually, and we've talked about this before too, when we're like telling stories or releasing trauma, like centered around love, like you can physically feel it, like in your heart. And I love that you brought up too that our bodies store that trauma and like store that like stress or the stories that we're telling ourselves. Like we can feel them in different parts of our body without even knowing it, and it's just so directly connected, like the mind and body.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was such an integral part of my healing, and I'm just observing that and being aware of that, because our bodies are always communicating with us.
Always. They're always communicating with us. And yeah, it's like just noticing, like living from a place of your heart, like that is you. Like that is you in the most authentic and real version of yourself. Like strip out all the stories of like society, who you think you're supposed to be, all the shoulds. Like what feels good in your heart is what is authentic to you. And it's just like noticing, like when do I feel the most joyful? When do I feel the most playful? What makes me feel the most like myself? Like when do I just feel that like pulsation, that vibration in my chest? That like those are the things that you want to cultivate more of and like put more energy towards.
Because you can feel it, like anyone, I mean, regardless of background or perspective, like we all know when we feel like excited about something or when we feel love towards something. Like it's, you can notice the difference in your body, in your mind, in your heart. And it's our bodies and our intuition are real, and they're communicating with us like on such a deep level. And it's so true that we're so busy running around all the time and like taking in these stressors and not taking the time to stop and notice like why am I feeling what I'm feeling? How do I want to feel? Like what is the space I want to create for myself?
Like what is that nagging feeling, you know, where it's just like, I mean, we're so, like you said, we're running around like all the time, so distracted that we don't notice these like little, because they're just whispers. It's not like it's, and the more you connect to it, the more you take time to listen to it and cultivate it, the stronger it gets. But, and it's so funny because like even now I'm like, I don't even know how I really like cultivated this like feeling of connection to my heart like so strongly to where it's like I know in the moment like yes or no. Like I just have to like take a second to feel into my body, but that was not my reality for so long. Like it's something that you just slowly start to discover. Like if you've never felt connected to your intuition, if you've never felt like you're living from a place of like your heart and like your life doesn't feel just like what your heart wants, like it doesn't feel like that. I mean, it's a process. It doesn't just happen overnight. And every single person that lives is living like a current heart-centered, like aligned life. At one point was not.
100%.
Like, there's nobody that's their whole life been like, oh, I'm just so connected to everything. Like, absolutely not. Yeah. And I think that even just like the power really comes in finding that connection within the struggle. And like within the heaviness. So it's like acknowledging that you're not always going to listen to your intuition. You're not always going to know, or not always going to do what you know you should. Like it's part of being human. And like don't waste energy on beating yourself up. Don't waste energy on being like, oh, I should have listened. I knew, like, you know that feeling of like, oh, I knew it. I knew I should have done that, right? Like everyone knows that. But like focusing on that does nothing. Like what actually is going to like help you move forward is just being like, okay, my body is trying to communicate with me. My heart is trying to communicate with me. And the next time I have that feeling, I'm going to listen. Or I'm going to at least like lean into it and explore it and be like, what is this trying to tell me? And that, like, I mean, that's the journey, that's the path. Like no matter where you're at on it, it's just always taking that time to sink into your heart space and just take a deep breath and ask yourself honestly, like, how does this feel in my body? Like regardless of what it would look like to everyone else, regardless of anything, like nothing else matters but how it feels to you in your body. And just trusting that. And I'm still learning this. I'm still seeing 100%. Areas where I don't fully trust my knowing and my intuition. And it's all a process.
And I feel like what you said about it, like no one comes out of the womb like that. And it's to this day, like even people that you see like living the most heart-centered aligned life, like still have those moments. And still, I think it's really key what you said about just not beating yourself up over it. Because I don't think it ever becomes like I mean, it might become like less present to some degrees, but like it's just learning to have that compassion for yourself and move through it in a different way.
Yeah. Compassion is so huge because, I mean, we are all living a human experience. We are all going to fuck up. Like,
yes.
So, I mean, it's just, you can't avoid it. And I can look back on my life and like things that I've said, that I've done, ways I've treated people that I just feel, I'm like,
Same.
like, how did I show up as that person, right? But like, when you start to fight it that way and you're like, oh, I never should have done that, or like, I wish I didn't, like, again, that just does nothing but create more resistance in your body and more just like fear and shame and like all the things that weigh you down and hold you back.
Exactly.
And it's just like that realization that we are all human. Like, we are all going to make decisions that are not in alignment with who we truly want to be and how we want to show up. Mm-hmm. And we all have traumas that are still playing out in some degree in our life. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the never ending work, right? It's like looking at all this stuff and realizing every single person has it. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody has it figured out. Nobody does this perfectly. There's not even a way to do it perfectly. Like, we're human. We're always, everything we experience. Yes, we can become so much more connected and live these incredibly amazing, just huge, beautiful lives. But at the end of the day, it's a human life. Like, you're still human.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's just finding that compassion for yourself and that ease in the process where you're at is exactly where you're supposed to be. And no matter like how disconnected you feel, knowing that like you don't have to live from that place forever. And it's not about like being past it. It's about like starting to like move through it and just like slowly just observing, like. And I think that this stuff used to frustrate me so much when I first started on this journey. I was like, but like, why am I still being like this? And why am I still a shitty friend sometimes? And why do I this, like that, like all these things, right? But then you're like, okay, like listen to what these people are actually saying. And I still have to, like, I find myself doing this all the time where I listen to somebody who's so inspiring and I'm like, oh, I want to be there. And then it's like, listen to their story and the words they're saying because they're literally telling you that they don't have it figured out, that they're still human and that they still struggle and that they're figuring it out as they go. And so like, let yourself do that in your own version. And like, what does that look like for you? It's not about like following this like one way, because that doesn't exist. And like, just deep breath and like compassion for exactly where you're at.
Oh my God.
And just starting from that place. And starting over again a million times because you're going to start and then you're going to go back and like totally forget that like you even had this intention.
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time.
Same.
I'm like, started my day with this like really beautiful intention. And I felt so connected and everything's so good. And then halfway through the day, I'm like, oh, right. I had this intention.
Where am I?
Okay. Let's like come back to the present moment. And like,
yes.
And that's literally it. Like,
and
that's
you can
the
always
work.
come back. You can it's always there.
Yeah. It's like finding that compassion for yourself where in like every moment, it doesn't matter how you showed up 5 seconds ago. Like, remember who it is you are trying to be, like what you want to embody. And just like in that moment, feel that and like allow that to be regardless of who you were. Like, it doesn't matter, right? And just like, it's not a straight line. It's so messy. Like, it's so messy. And I feel like that's the thing that I'm really just starting to learn. It's like I have all these goals and these timelines for myself. And then life is like, oh, hey, I got all this other stuff to show you. So really you don't know what you're doing, which like I never feel like I do.
Right.
But, you know, and then it's like having to realize like I can't be attached to the way I think it's going to unfold. Because if you're just consistently committed to being present and showing up with like what it is you're experiencing in that moment, your plan isn't going to get you like it's not going to get it. You don't even know what it is that you're like truly here to create. You don't even know like I don't even know a fraction of how like powerful and magical I am. And like you don't, like we don't, we're still learning. We're on this journey. And like that is one thing that I would say is like just give yourself the permission to pivot and evolve and try on different dreams, like different ideas of like, what is it I really want to do? Like, what is it I'm really passionate about? What do I actually just like love? And like, let it be different. I mean, like people that knew me like a couple years ago are probably like, what the fuck is she talking about? Because like, I never like this was like something that was just like such a foreign concept for me. It was something I didn't like understand. And if I would have allowed like who I used to be to like define who I'm going to become, like what? Yeah, it's just, I don't even have words for that, because it's just not, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense. And being so focused on how people are going to perceive you, or like what it looks like to constantly be changing your mind or exploring different avenues, like what does that matter? Like it doesn't matter what other people have to say about it. Like it's really just allowing yourself to follow what feels good for you, and like really deeply explore that. And not just like, oh, I like it'd feel good to sit on the couch and like watch Netflix all day. Like that's a different type of, that's not what I mean when I'm saying like what like really feels good. It's like that idea of like what is it that just like you can literally feel vibrating in your body when you think about it. Like that sort of feel good. Not just like that comfort of, oh, it feels good to be sitting here and not engaging in my life, which sometimes like it's okay, you know, to do that, but not like the feel good, the quick, that quick like satisfaction. It's like truly what is it that you are looking for that like feels so good when you think about it.
Yes. Oh, all of that. Needed all of that today. It's so crazy. Like you said, like we can set our intentions and we can be so centered, and thank God for friends that remind you of those things on like the perfect days. Because the worst thing we can do is hold ourselves or other people to past versions of ourselves, and beating ourselves up over not being where we thought we would be or whatever is still that lower vibration. And I'm still reminding myself of that all the time, but it's powerful to be able to just observe that and flow through it. Yeah. And sometimes, universe is like, you want to grow, here's some lessons. Like, so it's just taking them for what they are in that moment.
I mean, and I know we were talking about this earlier, it's just that shift from victim to just like actual active creator of your life is so huge. Because I mean, it's that idea like life isn't happening to you. Like it's happening for you. And that still like sometimes feels really uncomfortable for me. Like, and I understand that like life can be so hard, and like things that humans experience, like no one should have to experience some of the things that like people experience in this lifetime. And it's not about accepting that as just like, oh, well, this happened and that's just how it is. It's this like understanding of, okay, this is happening to mold me into a different version of like who I am. Like I look at I look at all of the most difficult things that I've experienced, and I would not be sitting here right now in this room, like having a conversation with you if those things hadn't happened. And we've talked about this too, like how all, like the way that we were connected, like the mutual friends that connected us, like how then like even like, I mean, you just follow the trails back, and literally how we know each other is like wild, but it's like, it's that understanding of every single thing that happens is happening to put you more on your authentic path. Like I really truly believe that the universe, God, like whatever it is that you call it, this higher power, this just like nature, whatever it is, like our natural state is our authentic state. And like we all so deeply desire to just be authentic. Like when life feels exhausting and you're just like so burnt out, it's like really from that place of like living a life that doesn't feel authentic to you. It's like, that feeling of when you're around somebody and you're having this conversation and then you just feel so drained at the end. Yeah. It's like that shows you that you're not showing up as an authentic version of who you are, because it's not flowing, it's not easy, it's not light. Yeah. And I mean, I just really believe that everything that happens to us happens to put us more on a path of like our true authentic self, because ultimately that's what we want for ourselves. Like our subconscious mind, like our soul, like that's really what it wants, is us to be able to experience a truly aligned and authentic life. Yeah. And we humans like get in the way of that so much, because like we're still operating on all of these other like programmings and limiting beliefs that aren't even truly who we are. Yeah. And so until you take the time to like really start to peel that back, I mean, for me, like I was forced into that, by like massive things in my life that happened. The universe was like, okay, none of anything in your life right now is actually what you want. None of it feels good. So I'm going to shatter it all. So you can start rebuilding.
I feel that.
And yeah, I mean, it's just everything that happens, it's not happening to you. Like, it is happening for you. And when you can like take a step back and like really start to see that, and it's okay to not be able to see that in the midst of things.
100%.
Like, I lived so many years of my life being like, why did these things happen to me?
Same.
Like, poor me. And I had so many reasons to believe that. Like, I mean, I felt such deep pain.
Yeah.
And that was all that I had at the time. Like, I didn't have tools. I didn't have people showing me a different perspective or a different way to see it. And I didn't have the capacity within myself to accept that.
Yeah. I feel that so hard. Like, it doesn't, saying that everything serves a purpose or happens for a reason or anything along these lines, I feel like never is to discredit like the pain that it is, or like it can still be dark and it can still be scary and it can still be painful, and like you should be feeling those things if you're there, but or you shouldn't anything, but you may be feeling those things while you're there, and that's exactly where you need to be be able to learn and evolve. And it really does, like throughout all the painful experiences I've had and the suffering and in the time, same thing, like, why is this happening, like, rah, and like looking back I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that happened. Like, it pivoted me to be exactly where I need to go. And sometimes the universe knows better. Like, we have all these plans and then universe is like, oh really, you really want that, like
right? Oh my gosh, it's so true. And I feel like when you're experiencing those things, the answer isn't to be like, when somebody's really in the depths of their pain and their suffering, and like, you don't say to them, oh, this is all just happening for a reason. Like, no. That's not the advice that I'm giving, because when people would say that to me, like somebody said that to me after like experiencing a really, really life-altering trauma, like, this is part of God's plan for you. And it was like, I can like physically feel the pain of what that felt like. Like, it just was like not what I needed at all in that moment. But there will come a time in everyone's own unique timeline when you can look back and you can see, like, if that one thing didn't happen, like, I wouldn't, like, I look and I'm like, I would not live in Colorado if that experience didn't happen. Like, my whole entire life, I prioritized, like, and idealized California. And I grew up in Arizona, like, in the desert. So, like, all I wanted was to live at the beach. Like, that was everything. And then I moved to California and experienced, like, these things. And my whole world shattered. And I was like, all I want is to get out of here. And through a series of very synchronistic events that at the time I didn't realize, but were so completely divinely guided, I ended up in Colorado. And I can remember the first time that I really like saw what my life had evolved into, and like all of everything that I experienced that felt just like so good that I wouldn't have experienced if it wasn't for that darkness. And it was overwhelming. And I did not leave my victim mindset after that. Like, I knew that ultimately, like, I was where I was supposed to be. Like, I could feel it, but I wasn't ready to like let go of that story yet. And that's where it comes back to, just like having the support, because I did not know how to move through that on my own. And I didn't have the tools or the resources. And so being able to have, like, for me, like, it was really the physical support and like that energetic body work that started the unraveling. But it was a lot of years before I was able to like shift that mindset. And even now, some days I feel myself like slip into it, and then I have to be like, no, I'm not going to keep telling that story. That's not the story I'm going to tell. And that's not the reality I'm going to live. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the events that brought me to Colorado. And I'm so grateful for where I'm at in my life. And And I'm so grateful to have had that victim experience, to know that that's not something that I want to continue to live out. And now it's like, it's been really interesting. I've been moving through some like pretty heavy stuff in the last month, and it's the first time that I've had a very difficult and like in its own way traumatic experience with this more like evolved mindset and awareness. And so watching myself like feel the pain and the feelings of all the feelings, but being able to do it from this place of like, okay, I am feeling so deeply, and I'm like, it is so overwhelming, but I know, like, not in this moment, I don't have to know it in this moment, but eventually, like, this is gonna make sense. And even now, it's so interesting because as I'm moving through this, it already makes sense. I'm like, I understand why I experienced this. I understand like the way that this has now like expanded me as a human, and the way that it's changed the path that I'm on. And like, because I lived so many of my years with that victim mindset, and because I didn't respond this way when I experienced other traumas, and like I had to move through all of that in such a different place, I'm experiencing this event so differently. And it's like, it's really amazing, because I feel like I have myself in this way that I haven't before, where it's like, okay, like we're going to get through this, and we're going to move through it. And it has happened fully for a reason. And that doesn't take away from the pain, but it's still just like that trust, that trust of just like everything that happens is like helping me become a more evolved and more expanded version of myself, if I so choose. And that's like, that shift changes the experience completely, because you're not searching for this like why. It's just this surrender to like what it is.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing so vulnerably with us. It's been incredibly inspiring, just feeling and watching you move through all of this just from such an evolved perspective. And yeah, it doesn't take away from the pain or the darkness or the struggle of all of it, but it's incredibly inspiring. So thank you. And by doing the work on yourself, you're able to just, and not even in the words, I mean, the words you're saying are amazing, but like not even just in the words you're saying, but just who you're embodying is shining your light to the world around you. And it's so inspiring.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you so much. So one last thing I want to touch on too is when it comes to moving through trauma and like doing the work and looking at our inner child, we've talked about how plants in many different ways have helped us move through these experiences. And on kind of a fun topic, and also kind of, it's also serious in some regard, but both of us have experienced very profound transformative healing experiences with both marijuana and mushrooms, and having those experiences in our bodies, in our brains, and being able to use those as tools to release trauma and to heal in so many different ways. So do you want to share a little bit about your experience with those tools?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny because, just like the way that I was raised, right? The stories that I was given, the rules that were handed to me, like I felt guilty for like smoking weed, for using cannabis, but it was such an integral part of my mental health. And like, absolutely, there were times when I abused it 100%, but like, as with any like tool or modality, there's always room for abuse. And for me, it felt so much better to know that I'm leaning on something that is natural, that is working with my body, instead of like medication. That just like that didn't, and I'm like, there's absolutely a time and place for medication. Like, I'm not saying that is something to be ashamed of at all. But for me personally, like, it was just like, it wasn't the path that I wanted to go down, and I didn't need it. And And yeah, it's been like, it's been such a journey. And it comes back to that idea of like, what feels good for you. Like, it does not matter what anyone else has to say. It doesn't matter what anyone else is like opinions are. It's having that honest conversation of yourself of like, is this truly serving me? And how is this serving me? Is this helping me? Is this feel good? Like, is this honestly something that is bringing value to my life? And I can fully answer that question for both like mushrooms and marijuana, like absolutely. And the way that I have like used weed has ebbed and flowed, and I feel like I've come to a really, really healthy relationship with it, where it's like something that I don't in any way rely on, but it allows me to like make connections and to like see things from a completely different perspective. And it's just like, again, like the plant's intelligence working with your body. And it's been like super powerful. And for me, I will say that like psychedelics, like mushrooms, have been one of the most powerful things for me to observe, like the healing and the whole process of trauma. And the first time that I did mushrooms, it was such a surreal experience. And I am incredibly intentional with how I use them. I have never once like used mushrooms in a party sense. I've never been like trying to escape. Every single time it's diving deeper into like another layer of my subconscious, and just like what, yeah, just it's always been with so much intention. And you know, like the science of it, I could talk about that, but I feel like I don't like know. I'm not like an expert whatsoever in like what it's actually doing to your body and like your mind. I just know like my own personal experience. And for me, like it allowed me to see everything from an entirely evolved perspective. And I never once didn't feel in control, or like I didn't feel like myself. Like I was fully present in my experience. It was just like this whole other expanded view and this whole other like reality that I had never even like thought to look at, you know? And it's been very powerful for me. And it's been a tool that like has really, really helped me. And even now, it's been months since I've taken mushrooms. It's not something that it's like, it's something that I feel like I've just been able to be very intuitive with. And there have been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can feel myself in these like, in this funk. And I just like, I need to expand my perspective. And yeah, using mushrooms has just been like such a huge part of that. And it's been really, really helpful. And it's been like a really incredible tool.
Yeah. And allows us to, I feel like, have experiences with our inner child in our brain. Yeah. And also like just both of those plants just connecting like different pathways in your brain, or even reconnecting pathways in your brain that allow you to see things from a different perspective. And when used intentionally, I feel like they're such a powerful healing modality. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. I had an experience one time like on mushrooms, and I feel like this was probably one of the like most profound like healing experiences I've had, where I was fully present and fully aware, and fully in my body, but at the same time I could feel like all of the trauma that was stored in my body. I felt it all, and I literally relived all of it, but I relived it from the knowing of who I was in that moment. And so it was like this connection where it was like I was experiencing all of the fear and the pain and the like disconnection and isolation of all of the things that I had experienced, all of the darkness that I had experienced. But at the same time, I was fully connected to and embodied to this like this person that I've evolved into that like could I don't even know how to explain it, but I was literally like experiencing the trauma and experiencing the person that it made me at the same time. And it just like caused this integration that hugely, hugely shifted my external world in like the months to come from that. And it was this realization too of just like all of these experiences are a part of me and they live in me still, right? But like, how can I meet them with like this radical love and acceptance and compassion, like that person that I was and like the things that I experienced, like also like everything that I am and like still yet to be, and just like merging the two of them and allowing them to be like this one cohesive experience instead of like this separation of, oh, I used to have this victim mindset and I used to be this and now I'm this. It was like the merging of both of them together. Does that make sense?
Yes, that is so powerful.
It was just like such a powerful and such a profound experience. And it was really, it was really heavy and hard to move through, but it was also so liberating. And I think that is like the biggest thing that using like mushrooms has helped me with, is just like not being afraid of feeling those things.
Oh, yes. And
like feeling them from a place that is beyond just like my normal experience as a human.
Yeah.
But yeah, that truly was such a pivotal experience for me. And I literally saw a shift play out in the way that I approached my life, and the way that was like such a huge turning point for me. And it was so powerful.
I love that you say it's like liberating and freeing, because that is the work. That is like what it is. Like it takes courage and bravery to like step up to the plate and be like, all right, let's do this thing. Like being open to that, being open to move through things again and just release them and free yourself from those stories. And you are doing it. You are living it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so grateful for everything that you have shared here today and just everything that you are, and super stoked to see what we talk about a year from now on here. Yeah. But I want to ask one final question. Yes. That if you had to leave us with any of your input and feelings on how to be a happy human, what would you share with us?
Taking the time to like connect into your heart. And like I would really say it's like truly asking yourself, like, how do I feel? How does this make me feel? Is this serving me? Is this who I want to be? Like, is this a story I want to keep living? Like, how does it feel to you? And that is like literally all that matters. It doesn't matter what it looks like or what other people think about it. None of it matters. It matters how it feels inside your body. So just leading with that, like leading with your heart, and just the number one thing that you prioritize being how it feels to you.
I love that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And just for everything that you're doing. And I'm so grateful to know you and to be connected to you. And
I love you so much.
I love you so much.